getting better all the time. I really am pleased to be here this morning. What I want to point out, the first thing to you is outside, many of you may not have seen it, is a preview of our National Train Day information, and I kind of stacked them up behind the table outside. And it really, I thought this morning that I would talk a little bit about that, kind of where we're going. And I really thought about what do you come and tell the, which way is west in this room? So I should be standing back here. The center of the earth, where did you want to sit? Back a little further? Okay. I understand Amtrak differently now, of course, and understood Amtrak differently as George talked about a little bit a few minutes ago, whether your perspective is from a state or whether your perspective is from a regulator, the FRA, or from now the president and CEO. But I do have to differ with George from the sense of the guy that's really in charge, because Amtrak is a very large organization with about 20,000 people, and several thousand people among them that have particular interest in doing something different with passenger rail in the United States. And so when you talk about being in charge, one of the things I like to say, and I've been saying to staff, is I understand, well, I think Lou, one of the car attendants, says it best. He says, they don't let me run the train, they don't even let me ring the bell. But when this train goes off the tracks, guess who gets the hell? So from that standpoint, I suppose a CEO gets that. But what you do really have to do is understand that you don't know how to run a railroad. Even Brian Rosenwald doesn't really know how to run a railroad. You know, and Brian's going to be up here later to talk. What you find is you abandon yourself to the strengths of those that do know how to run a railroad. And the strength of Amtrak are those people that do know how to make that railroad run and puts it together in a way that everybody understands that. There's a connectivity out there, an issue today that is particularly important. I see Dee Mason over here. She made sure, right? Am I right? You know, I've met so many people in the last several days. I look at somebody and say, how you doing, Pat? Sam. Okay. But I understand, and what I understand is the passion that does come from all of those that are trying to run this railroad in a different way. And I thought this morning one of the stories I wanted to start with was this little girl that, this is a made-up story, but I'm going to tell you, that this little girl, a friend of mine's daughter, and I'm visiting the house, and she comes up and she grabs a hold of my pant leg, and this is Amtrak now. I want you to think about Amtrak. The new Amtrak. The new Amtrak since President Barack Obama has decided to provide. She comes up, she's pulling on my pant leg, and she says, Uncle Joe, I got a new bike. You got a new bike? Yeah, it's out in the backyard. Can you come out and see it? So, of course, I wanted to see the bike. I went out into the backyard, and I looked at it, and I said, that's a beautiful bike. Can you ride it? Sure, I can ride it. Then she pouted, but it's broken. It's broken? So I look over the bike. The bike looks fine, looks like it's going to work fine. I said, Michelle. I didn't pick that for the president's wife, but it's Michelle. Michelle, what's wrong with the bike? You say you can ride it. She said, well, every time I get on it, it falls. Now, Amtrak is in a bit of the same situation at this point in time. Because Amtrak today, and I think Stephen Gardner, who's our new Vice President for Policy and Development, has said it best, we need to revise the status quo with Amtrak. We need to give people permission to think differently in Amtrak. We need to allow them to change their hearts and to understand, to some extent at least, the battle has been won in regard to making investment. And Mark Yaknitz from the FRA said it was like, I'm not supposed to talk to anybody at the FRA, so I just heard this. that it's kind of like, you know, the dog that caught the car. What do we do now? We have to use it right. Because, as the President said, this is a down payment. So we need to do whatever it is that we're going to do correctly. And I think that's what we've engaged in. The $1.3 billion that Amtrak received right up front was almost 70% obligated just this last month. We're moving very quickly to improve things. And when I come down, and I really am enjoying going around the country. It is, and I have, for some of you have been, boy, I see you guys posted that picture already on the web last night. I did. I got he does, Alice and Patrick. Came by last night, we took a picture outside the 10,001, and this morning I got a message from our CFO, a new guy at Amtrak. His name is DJ Statler. And DJ was responsible, quite frankly, for all of those who don't know it, with saying, if we're going to have Employee Appreciation Day on May 1st, wouldn't they appreciate their back pay checks on May 1st? I said, let me think about that. Yeah, I think they would. So what we had yesterday, and for those of you that understand, there was an 8-year period when Amtrak could not get an agreement with their unions, and it was mostly on the management side of Amtrak's fault. Not the managers so much, but the direction that was being given from on high about what to do with Amtrak prevented the ability to come to an agreement. We have an agreement now. In my role coming into Amtrak, my sense is we needed a safer, a greener, and a healthier Amtrak. And part of that healthier Amtrak is the relationship you have with those who do the work that know how to run the train. And if you saw, thank you. If you saw yesterday, our Appreciation Day, you would also see that we had tables that were set up that talked about stopping smoking, that talked about losing weight. I'm doing that too, by the way. I did join Weight Watchers, but I don't think I've lost anything on this trip. I did lose 13 pounds before I got on this trip. We talked about blood pressure. We talked about the things that make people healthier, but that the company needs to be healthier in terms of its finances and where it's going for the future. It needs to be greener. It needs to be safer. I took the call on Chatsworth, something that's, you know, near and dear to those of you here in the West Coast. It gave us the incentive, the propulsion to really get a reauthorization that started with safety, but Division B on that was for Amtrak. And people like Stephen Gardner, people like the FRA, all the folks at FRA and Amtrak, all of us, and you, worked hard for a reauthorization of Amtrak and the improvements that are going to come as a result of positive train control. We see that as critical here on the West Coast and across the country. It's going to cost us, yes. The initial estimates for positive train control were in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 billion, and has very quickly now become over $6 billion. But this morning I picked up the paper and I saw we're now abandoning a Department of Defense program, I think it was actually in yesterday's paper, that a program that we just spent about $14 billion in research and development on, and we stepped away from it. And what we need to understand here for rail is that this, in fact, is a down payment. And we can't get to squabbling too darn much about this $8 billion and how we're going to spend it and who gets it. What we really need to do